Welcome to the first edition of the Spiritual Capitalist podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined today with two panelists that's going to join me in talking about spiritual capitalism. I look at them as spiritual capitalists, whether they call themselves that or not. Their behaviors and their characteristics have proven that's how they live their lives, and that's going to be the basis of the show. Before I bring them on, I want to really define where spiritual capitalism is, because I know that to many it's a new concept, a new thought perspective. A lot of people are thinking capitalism, spiritual. So I want to define that. So spiritual capitalism is based on a book by Michael E Hendren titled Spiritual Capitalism, which is a philosophy that animates the spiritual power of love combined with empowerment, liberation, and transformation. With capitalism, quantum performance, productivity, and astute financial management. It's about managing the head and leading with the heart by integrating the power and intellect of the mind with the transformational power of love. So that's what spiritual capitalism is about. And so I'm honored today to have two uh, conscious leaders, authors, coaches, as well as spiritual capitalists who are living the walk and improving and impacting lives of many individuals. I've interviewed them both on my previous show, King Connections podcast, and I wanted them to be a part of this show because we hear so many different discussions. At least my YouTube feed has been just flooded with conversations on Ye, or the artist formerly known as Kanye West, and the comments he's made not only about the Jewish community, about the Black community, and we're going to really dissect them from a different perspective, not a gossip perspective, but a much more spiritual, feeling, love perspective. So again, join us as we explore how spiritual capitalism can stop the hate and divisiveness in today's world by adopting this ideology and focusing on building more fully human connections. With that being said, I want to introduce my first guest on my first panelist, I should say, Altovise Pelzer. Did I pronounce it correct this time? Did I get it right? I'm proud.
Close. Altovise.
Altovise, and it's like it's spelled. I just for some reason Altovise. I'll get it going from this point forward.
No worries. So, super excited to be able to add to this conversation. I think there are so many people, again, depending on what platform you're listening to, the conversation going on right now when it comes to yay, like it can sway you one way or another as to how you see not only what he's going through personally, but everything that's going on around him. And I think there are some key elements that are getting missed in the conversation because, certain conversations are swayed one way or another, and we miss out some really key components. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because, again, there are some key things that we can kind of pinpoint that may have been missed when it comes to not only his journey, but again, to what he's done for the industry in many different arenas. So
Absolutely. But before we begin, before we really get into the conversation, I really want to give the listening audience an opportunity to really understand who you are and your accomplishments that you've achieved. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving a brief bio of who you are.
Sure. I'll talk about myself. I'll to be Pelzer here, host of the hashtag Speakeasy podcast. I've been podcasting now for 6 years. I am an author / co-author of now 21 books. I am a women's empowerment speaker, single mom of 4. I am an introvert, which definitely plays into a lot of this stuff, this journey called entrepreneurship. But also I am a woman that empowers other women to become unmuted, telling their story, finding the strength within their story, and using it as a catalyst within their life and business.
Excellent. I think we missed the last part of that. Something happened to your mic. Are you still there? Can you hear us?
Oh, yes. Oh, I said I unmute the voice of women and I help them to use their story as a catalyst for them to be able to elevate in life and in business.
I say I love that unmute the voice of women. Definitely love that. And it's definitely necessary in today's climate for sure. And I want to bring out my next panelist, Oliver Marcelle, who is a author, speaker, coach as well. And Oliver, welcome to the Spiritual Capitalist Show. If you wouldn't mind kind of giving a brief bio of yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here and sit amongst great folks, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I am Oliver Marcelle. and I run around town calling myself the friendly neighborhood relationship contractor. I help you build your relationship, the relationship of your dreams, both personally and professionally, and do that through a number of ways. Also, very passionate about men's empowerment, and as such, speak in that space and coach in that space, coach in the relationship building space as well. And it's just my goal to. You probably can't see the T-shirt behind me. It's blurred out, but 2020 before hindsight is the mantra, if you will. I am looking to help at least one person gain some clarity on the front end before they have to live in hindsight based on decisions that were made or things that they ran across or friends that they chose or you name it that may throw off the trajectory of their life. I lived that. And so it's my goal to help individuals avoid that. So that's a little bit about me. Looking forward to this conversation. I, like both of you, have seen several different things, and as such, you know how the media does it muddies the waters, if you will, as it relates to how we look at some of these things. But I'm looking forward to the conversation with us, because the perspective, I feel like, will be not necessarily different, but maybe more holistic in nature. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I definitely respect both of you all's perspective. Your work and your character is mostly important. More importantly, I should say. So let me into the context about this discussion by just kind of stating this. You know, what I found to be really interesting about Ye is the fact that, and we've said this many times, it's been spoken many times, that the Black community is not monolithic, right? We don't all think on one accord. However, we're treated in this country as though we do, right? They always talk about the Black vote as though there's only, we all vote one way, and so we always get grouped together and we get treated together as one monolithic, but we don't think monolithic. And I believe what Kanye, to me, one of the greatest things he proved when he made those comments, which were disparaging, and I don't approve those comments, first of all, about the Jewish community, or the comments he's made about the Black community in the past and continue to make about the Black community, bringing up George Floyd, slavery was a choice, and all those idiotic statements. But I just want to point this out quickly, and I'll let you all give me your thoughts on this. What I really found to be really interesting is the fact that I looked at 6 different communities within the Black world space, so to speak. The hip hop community, again, perspectives differ based on the level of financial success and influence the artists have. So artists who were more established artists who obviously work with a lot of Jewish accountants, managers, publicists, they wanted to say, well, they distanced themselves from Kanye, rightfully so, because don't bring me into this fight. As a matter of fact, I remember Ice Cube had his issue with the Jewish community back when he made No Vaseline. He made that comment, and he was quickly, when he said, you let a Jew break up our crew, and then he got backlash for that, for being anti-Semitic, changed his line, and then from that point forward, didn't have any more issues. And Kanye actually had mentioned Cube as a conglomerate and what he's doing. Like, yeah, me and Cube quickly put out a tweet like, don't put me in your mess. That's on you. You on your own with that. That's not how I feel at all, right? So then you had all the artists from the hip hop community who have not been successful. Like one in particular is, and I listen to his podcast quite a bit, is Willie D, formerly from the Ghetto Boys. And Willie D is really about lambasting Kanye. Like, he deserves this. I want everything bad to happen to Kanye. I'm tired of hearing Kanye. He's just an attention whore, using his language, and I want him to fall. So I just kind of wanted to stop there and just kind of see what your thoughts about that, and just kind of hear what your perspectives are.
I think it's for us, especially as African Americans, knowing that we're all lumped together. That's how they see us. And until somebody steps out and says otherwise, we deal with this on a regular basis. We've been dealing with this for all of our lives. But then I think we're also in a space as African Americans where we tend to do that for other nationalities, for other cultures as well. Let's just be honest. Through how we've grown up, depending on what neighborhood, what community you were in, you had a different perspective about those who were in the Spanish speaking community, where, you know, somebody who may not have been in those communities may not be able to tell the difference between somebody who's Mexican and somebody who's Puerto Rican. If you've been in that atmosphere, then you're able to tell the difference. So exposure is what allows us to be able to differentiate between one person or another. If you don't have the exposure, then everybody's lumped together. So I think where he is at this point, he's seeing a lot of people that make him lump everybody together and say the Jewish community, but that's not the case. You've not been in connection with every Jew. That's just a reality check. You've not been in business with every single Jew that's in business. So you can't lump it and say that it's the Jewish community, because even when we think about what we've been through with racism, and we can say, you know, the white community, well, guess what? Every person that is Caucasian is not acting the same way. Everybody is not out here burning crosses or wearing a white sheet over their head. So it's really hard for us to do that, because when you've been hurt, all you see is what you see. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to hear anybody else's perspective about it.
Right.
You don't care how somebody else feels. All you see is what you see. So I think at this point, that's one of the reasons why we're hearing the statements that we're hearing from him, is he's coming from a place of hurt. Let's just be honest. He's coming from a place of being hurt. He's coming from a place of being discouraged. He's coming from a place of feeling abandoned. Because abandonment and shame and all of that stuff runs together. And when you come to that point where that's how you feel, and you feel like you're the little kid that's in the corner, you're an animal that's in a corner, what's going to happen? What happens when you put any animal in a corner? They either get scared and pass out, or they're going to fight.
Right.
Even if you weren't the one that put them in the corner.
Yeah. That's good. I would agree with that. I think that what happens with us as human beings from a language perspective is that, to speak to the hurt that you just mentioned, we are very quick to allow that hurt and the representations of that hurt, whether it be a certain person, a certain ethnicity, or whatever it is, an action, a scenario, to become the point of reference for how we view that entire scenario and all of the components of it, and the people or things that represent it, right? So just like what you said, if I get robbed by a black man, now I'm like, that's my point of reference. The hurt was that I was robbed. The lens that I look through is the thing that represents that hurt, which is the black man. So now everybody is dangerous. All black men are dangerous. I got to be worried about being robbed every time I'm around a black man. And we do that quite often. I think just to be, so what you'll notice in this conversation is that I probably will be somewhat of the devil's advocate in a lot of this. I think the problem with Ye is that he doesn't take the time to articulate his thoughts, which I'm guilty of. So I can understand that. So for those who know me, I'm very big on communication, and I am a shotgun communicator. There's several types that my wife and I talk about when we do our seminars, but I'm guilty of that. So I'm guilty of saying something, it just comes out exactly how it shows up. And then when it's out, I'm like, so here's what I was and by the time you get to that, well, here's what I was really, the damage is done.
Yeah.
And so for him, he said those statements, and then he started to call specific people's names. So these are the problems these are the people you really have the problems with. The lawyer, you have the problem with this, the record exec, you have that. So say that, articulate that in a way that we can understand, okay, I can get the connection with what you're saying. So if I'm like, this person did me wrong and that person did me wrong, and here's the thing that went wrong here, and here's how I feel like I was taken advantage of, I can get behind that, as opposed to you making this blanket statement, which obviously we understand the world that we live in. That's obvious blowback. And so for me, I think that's the other side of the coin, if you will, is that his I don't even know if it's inability, because I was talking to my daughters about this the other day. I was like, I'm not convinced that this guy is a smart dude. Like, I'm convinced that he's a smart dude. So maybe it's not even the inability to articulate it. It's just the unwillingness to articulate it.
You know, I think both of you all make great points. And obviously, you're right. He didn't make sure to specifically call out the individuals he had an issue with. I think he did it intentionally, right? I think that what he's following, and I don't have any basis of this in my perspective, but I think he's really following Donald Trump's blueprint to focus on trying to be in the consciousness of the media on a daily basis by saying outlandish things that would get people talking, right? That's what Donald Trump has done. He's continued to do that, and ever since 2 years prior to him running for the office and the entire time as president, he's been in a news cycle every single day by saying something outlandish. And that's what Kanye seems to be doing by doing it, because he knew that a hot button issue, because he tried it before with the black community, right? He's been doing that, but it hasn't been as successful as staying on the top of the news cycle. But think about it. You know that every black person was going to be offended when you say slavery was a choice. You know, he knew that was an outlandish, crazy statement to make, but that didn't stick. Then he came out and said, you know, Harriet Tubman. So then you go talk about George Floyd. But then you realize, okay, well, I know that what would get everybody so hot and so heated if I come out and make a statement about Jews that's anti-Semitic, and then classify them all in one group, and then double down on it when I get the opportunity to speak and act like I'm not going to apologize, and really use that to really get my platform and get people talking about me and get me in the American lexicon on that. I think that he's done it every single time he come out with an album. I think he has intentions to run for president. I think Kanye is a very selfish, self-centered narcissist. I do think he's genius. I do think he's brilliant in the context that he can create, and he's tapped into the universal energy of understanding what moves modern culture, right? And that's why he's been financially successful with that. But by the same token, I think he's definitely all about himself. And my point on that real quick is I saw another interview with him with Dr. Boyce Watkins, who's a doctor that advocates for, you know, Black liberation, Black economics. And he was on his show quickly talking about, well, now I want you to reach out to all the Black farmers. I want you to reach out to all the Black, you know, teachers. And that's really begin to build, because this is our opportunity to really make something happen. I'm like, brother, according to you, you've been worth $11 billion. And now you want to try to build? I mean, you had the capability of building long time ago. You've been a billionaire since 2013, 14. But now you want to add and bring the Black community back and say, let's build. So I think he probably wants to build, but I do think he suffers from having wisdom around him to really guide him on and say, this is how you go about reaching out, and this is how you need to be strategic on what you're saying and what you're doing.
See, you know what's funny? I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that stood out when we're talking about this whole situation is that people were like, well, if he knew all of this stuff about Adidas and all of these different Balenciaga and all these companies, he knew about the stuff that was going on behind the scenes before he got into bed with them, then why would you still get into bed with them? Right. And so when you're thinking about it from the non-business standpoint, then it's, well, okay, that doesn't make any sense. When you think about it from the business standpoint, it makes very good sense, because there are so many people that an open door is an open door. The same way that we said, you know, there's this idea that all press is good press. No, it ain't. Bad press is bad press. Don't try to put sugar on it and tell me that it's not grass that you got from outside. It's still grass. So we have to have this understanding that, yes, there are still people when it comes to business is still business. And so you're going to say yes to an open door if you feel as though it's going to bring you in the direction to which you're trying to go. Here's where we differentiate between the entrepreneur that is conscious and the one that is money driven. The one that is conscious realizes that every open door is not the one you're supposed to step through.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the back end, you could do more damage than any benefits you got from it. And so you see that there are some entrepreneurs, business owners, that are very strategic in the steps that they make. I'll give an example. When we saw Jay-Z sit down with the NFL, and people were like blowing it out of proportion, they're like, oh, why would he do that? No, no, no. If you're thinking about it from the business perspective, he is an owner of a team. He is not of one of the NFL teams, but he's an owner of a sports team. He has sports clients underneath his like he has to think about it from that perspective. And you always have to, again, make calculated steps. But he saw something and did the work to see something different. To date, we haven't seen a negative drawback from that. But it's being conscious about what you're doing before you step into it. And I think for him, yes, he has been able to sign deals and get a check upon a check. How much you want? They've been like, how much you want? How much? Because of his name. Even though they knew what comes with his name. And whereas we're looking at it from, okay, yay, what were you thinking? How about looking at it as these companies, what were y'all thinking? Like, what was really going on in their process before they said yes to him or actually reached out to go ahead and sign these deals with him? Because not every company did. There are a lot of companies that turned him down and said no. And that's that business piece of it, because they don't care about they care about the money, the dollars and the cents. So how much are you going to bring in? And now they're dealing with this whole big blowout. He did not turn into this person overnight. Going down his Twitter feed, going down his social media feed. Go ahead, Google him. Ask Uncle Google. This is not new. Like, we're not seeing like, oh my goodness, he's acting. No, this is not new. Yeah. But yet, because of the way that business is set up, these businesses were like, oh, well, we know just off of his name, we're going to make this amount of money. And so there was no real thought process to start off.
Yeah, I think that's how I think in all industries, right? So, you know, he's a hip hop person, right? So he's in the hip hop industry. And if you think about it, right? Even in hip hop, we were the creators of this art form, but we didn't run it from a business perspective. And so even now, if you are trying to get into this space, you're probably going to go to like the Leor Cohens and those individuals of the world to really get your start. And it's a money grab. And it's interesting because it's a clip now that's really going all over the place. And it's funny because Charlemagne said that it would go all over the place, and it has, with their interview with Leor Cohen, where he was like, I got mouths to feed.
Exactly.
So there you have it. Like, we see the potential in a monetary standpoint, but we know there's some issues with you, or whatever the case may be. We don't subscribe to your ideologies, but what you bring to the table feeds mouths for me, right? And the actual word Leor used was opportunistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So and it's like that in all of these industries. And what we fail to do, at least I won't say all of us, because that's not a blanket statement, but what many fail to do when they do get that opportunity is figure out a way to leverage that into something that they can control, which some people argue is why Ye is even doing what he's doing right now, because he wanted to get out of that stuff so that he could figure out a way to go straight from him to the consumer. And that's an argument that, you know, is valid. We don't know, but that's a speculation. But that's part of the problem too, is that when I get that open door, it does not matter what it cost me, because of what I feel like I'll gain once I walk through it.
Yeah.
And that's a trap in a way.
Yeah. You know, I kind of have a slightly different perspective on that. I look at it like this. I agree with you all saying in the context, but I also look at it from the standpoint that, you know, at the end of the day, when you do business, it's up to you to make sure that if you're conscious, that your messaging, your brand gets displayed in a proper way. Now, if you're not conscious, which obviously Kanye wasn't, you know, then all you care about is dollars, and that's what it's shown. But I really find it hard to blame someone that helped him become a multi-billionaire. You know, now if they were multi-billionaires and he was sitting around with just $150,000, then yeah, you absolutely right, Kanye. They took advantage of you, they robbed you, but you wouldn't became a multi-billionaire without those connections, without their resources, without those contracts, you know. And again, looking at it from a context of a business person, and you all both know this, we in our community, we're blessed with talented people who have the ability to either rap, sing, dance, play sports that never make it. And we all like, wow, you know, if this person had the opportunity to make it to the NBA, they were better. I've heard so many people tell me from North Carolina, they've seen so many people that played better than Michael Jordan, but never actually made it for whatever reason there may have been, right? So my point I'm making is, now you have someone who is a businessman, Jewish or whoever it may be, that says, I see your talent. You're not really bringing anything to the table but talent. And I'm going to take my money, my connections, my resources, my social capital, and I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to put you out there. I'm going to create a brand for you. I'm going to pay for your studio time. I'm going to do all this upfront investment. And then the artist expects to get 50% of profit from that. It's like, you haven't given me anything but just your voice. And I can go, you know, really just have a, you know, America's Got Talent and find a voice to do, you know, I don't need your voice specifically. I can just get another person. So it's their capital that they use. And it's like in real estate, which business I'm in, if you knew the real estate and you want to get into the game, like most people do, they expect to get in the game and get the same cut from someone who's been in the business for 15 years and have all the connections and all the resources. It doesn't work that way. You go through your, I would say, introduction period, which may be the first 3 or 4 deals. You just lucky if you make any money at all. But then now you learn the experience, you learn the business, you get the competence. Then you can say, okay, now I can step away from you because now I know the game. And now I can go out here and get 100% of what I want. But then you also learn that process. And that to me is what I think that Yee is not looking at. Look at the game and the experience you've learned. You've sat in a room with billionaires. You've negotiated contracts with Adidas. And then my final point is, I think he's exploited our community on quite a bit. And it's not that I have an issue with Kanye. I really don't. I really respect him as an artist. But when you try to position yourself as a revolutionary, that's why I got to come at you, because you're not a revolutionary. Because you're a revolutionary, you wouldn't sit here and say, I'm going to make a deal with Adidas. And we all know that Adidas, the most expensive shoe that Adidas made prior to Kanye was their Forms. They came out with $125. And that was like a one-off rarity. So they didn't really have a lot of shoes that were very expensive. So you go to them as your manufacturer and distributor, and then you add your name to the same kind of quality that shoe they've been making. Now your shoe is $500, $600. And you're saying that you're helping the Black community. No, you're helping yourself. You know, you're not sharing that. And you talk about you want to put more Yeezy stores in Atlanta, and they stopped you from doing all that. It's like, and you want the Black community to come around and help you. Those are billionaire problems you're having. Those are not Black community problems. Those are billionaire problems. And because you're Black, now you want to tap into our sensibilities and get us all riled up. Whereas you've had the capability of doing much more. Like LeBron used his money and opened a school. Use his knowledge, his resources, his investment. He did something that was tangible, that's impactful, and it's improving people's lives. To your point, Jay-Z, He said, okay, I see how the record companies do, and they've been doing this for years. They always are going to underpay the artist because, again, anytime you walk into a situation and you're not bringing capital to the equation, the person who's using that capital is always going to be the person to get the majority of the profit. That's just how business works. It's not a race thing. It's just a business thing. But Jay-Z said, okay, I learned the game. I'm going to create my own distributing service. It's called Tidal. And I'm going to put all my content on there, and any other artists that want to join me. See, that to me is revolutionary type activity. It's not to come out and just say, I'm going to call out the entire Jewish community for exploiting Black people and then call it revolutionary. No, that's just you being narcissistic and you want attention. That's just my perspective on that.
I can see that. I can see that. I think it's some of that indeed. I think some of it is exposure as well. And Altovise, I think you talked about that early on. The individuals who come into the industry, if we're talking about the music industry, and feel like they need to get everything that is quote unquote owed to them, just shows a lack of exposure because of what we see on the outside. We see this guy makes it quote unquote overnight, and then is in a video wearing a $100,000 watch and walking out of a $300,000 car. But we're not exposed enough to the process to understand that stuff probably ain't even his. So we come into it thinking, okay, that's what I need. That's what I deserve. I'm better than that person, so I deserve more than that. And then you don't take the time to really, because you talked about what you described, King, was from a conscious perspective. So if the conscious person is really doing their due diligence and is really studying and paying attention to the process and ingesting and learning and putting the pieces in place, then they understand how the process works, and they understand that they're leveraging that process for something greater.
Right.
As opposed to the person who's not conscious is like, man, this is going to make me rich. And that's all I'm really concerned about. This is going to make me rich, and I'm going to do it at all costs and, at the expense of everybody and anything. But here's the flip side of that. And I'm not saying this is the case, but just to play devil's advocate, could it be that Ye is waking up to the fact that, okay, I've been kind of moving in the wrong direction in terms of this consciousness thing, and now I want to do something different. And then it's hard because as a community, and I don't want to stereotype, but we talk about the fact that he was taking advantage with these $600 shoes, but I know a lot of people who got them.
Right.
So that's the toss up. Like, okay, well, obviously I must be doing something great because I'm getting this. So it just kind of feeds into the level of unconsciousness, if you will, to continue to do what I'm doing because it feels like it's working for me. But then from a business standpoint, maybe maybe there aren't instances where people are getting taken advantage of, or you are working with the Leor Cohens of the world and that kind of thing. And now you're like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just putting it out there. It could be. Who knows?
Exactly. That's the point of our discussion.
One of the things you got to think too, when we think about a lion in a cage, a lion that's working when it comes to a circus, a lion that's working when it comes to quote unquote working when it comes to them being at a zoo. When we think about a whale that's at SeaWorld, like, I'm gonna give you enough for you to be comfortable in the space you're in.
Wow.
And so because in order for you to say yes and sign on a dotted line, whatever you're saying yes to literally had to make you comfortable enough for the seat that you were going to be in. Because again, when you come into it, he already knew about all this stuff. He already knew about the brand deals and the stuff that goes right, the stuff that goes wrong. He knows all of that. But when you come into it, in order for you to sign on that dotted line, you have to say, whatever they're going to feed me, whatever they're going to tell me, I need to do 4 shows a day. I need to do this. I need whatever it is. Whether I fully understand it or not, I'm signing on that dotted line saying, I agree to it. And the most I guess the most painful piece of it is not just that he went forward in signing on the dotted line, knowing the different things that come from it, but then also that was the example for others coming behind him. And we can say, there are certain people that, of course, they go, oh, well, children shouldn't be looking at him as a role model, and people shouldn't be. That's a lie. Please stop that. If you have any type of influence, you're a role model. I don't care if you like it or not. That's the position that you are now in. Not just because a parent may not, it's like, oh yeah, look to this person. No, but because they see something that you're doing that they're interested in doing. They see a level that you've achieved or that they believe you've achieved that they're looking to get to. And so they're going to follow in your footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
So how many high school students are looking at him right now and saying, oh man, I can't wait till I sign a contract with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I can't wait till I'd be able to, because the reality is we're still fresh in this atmosphere. For the longest time, who made sneakers? If you had a sneaker, it's because you were in sports.
Right.
Clothing line. Who had a clothing line? Like, you be having a clothing line, you didn't already have like a whole following already. Like, you were coming in and putting your feet to the street. But now if you have any type of influence, people are influencers on social media selling t-shirts. I mean, that's the process we're going through, right? That's where we are right now. So it's become very easy for a lot of people, but there are so many people that think that, again, the whole process is supposed to be easy. You're supposed to want my product. You're supposed to want because I am me. Who are you to tell me that I'm not the greatest? Who are you to tell me that I'm not worth it?
Yeah.
And I think with every generation, that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so we're presenting this journey, this path where it looks like, oh, yeah, no, it's good. It's a couple leaves in the path, but that's okay. But underneath those leaves are bear traps.
Wow.
Like, you're like, no, follow me. Come on, follow. Yeah, no, because this is the way you're supposed to do it. And then you're walking them right into bear traps. You're walking them right into, I almost had the imagery of back when they would have they would have like the hole in the ground, and then they have sticks and leaves covering it. But underneath there's stakes. And you would literally go unknowingly and walk on it and immediately fall and have a slow death. And there are so many that are following in his footsteps that will have a slow death. He was able to survive and get out the pit, but how many coming behind him will be able to do the same?
Yeah, that's good too, because that really speaks to why it's important as leaders that we are creating opportunity for individuals to learn, and really learn in a way that is holistic and that takes the covers off of a lot of this, because all we see, to speak to what you just said, is that point of reference of being at the top. So I feel like once I step on the scene and people know who I am, I should go from the ground floor to the top floor, and that there's no process in between. And that process is where a lot of people lose their business, lose their level of influence, lose their leverage, because they weren't prepared for that, because that exposure wasn't there. And I feel like for individuals like Ye, and even if not at that high level, even on our level, because we're leaders as well, that has to take place. And that's why I feel like from an articulation standpoint, he's not saying the right things, because here's I'm not gonna say here's the truth of the matter, but here's what could be the truth of the matter. It really could be that those industries are run by individuals who are really cutthroat, who maybe happen to be in the same, category in terms of where they're from and what their background is, their family of origin is. And maybe he has to be made an example of, because we can't have everybody doing that, because that messes me up as an industry owner or leader. But the flip side of that is like you said, he was able to get out. And he really could script this in a way that empowers many, many individuals to walk a different path to get to the same destination. So as conscious leaders, like, we really have a responsibility to do that. And that's where I feel like he needs to have some folk around him who are like, hey, listen, okay, here's where we are. Here's what you can do with where you are. If you're really talking this stuff about, hey, we need to get together, we need to do this, we need to do that, here's how you do that in a way that allows individuals who don't know this process to understand how to walk that path and maybe bypass some of the mishaps that you are just so vocal about.
You know, absolutely, absolutely. And see, that's why I'm saying about my issue with him. You know, I can't see how you can call yourself a revolutionary when you haven't done anything revolutionary. You know what I mean? You can't just put that title on yourself because it feels good. I mean, revolutionary was Prince, right? When Prince put the slave mark on his cheek to let you know Sony is not giving me control of my music. I'm gonna give up my name and go by the artist formerly known as Prince, and Sony can have that name until I get this thing worked out. And then he got it worked out, and he controlled his distribution rights and all his as they say in music, he controlled all his tapes, he controlled everything. And so now that meant that you no longer can find much of Prince's new music on YouTube at all. This is old music because he controls that. You got to get it from Prince, right? Same thing with Michael Jackson when he decided that he went and brought the Beatles catalog. He brought the entire catalog. See, that's revolutionary boss moves when you start to do things of that nature. You don't put out there to everybody, I'm a revolutionary, tell everybody, and just call out names like he did, right? And my other issue with Kanye is this. He made it. That's what I'm saying. He, by his own, I don't know if this is true, but his own, out of his own mouth, he said he was the richest black man in America. So how can you 1 minute say I'm the richest black man in America, and then next minute you want to be victim? See, it doesn't go well together. Either you made it or you're the victim. You know, and he taps into that victim thinking that a lot of our community has. And that's why I respect about you two is that we know racism exists as a system structure. We've gone through the pains and the challenges of what it means to be a black man and what it means to be a black woman in business and life, dealing with the police, all these issues. But we don't let the victim mentality hold us back. We don't say because we're black, what we can't do. You've written over 20 books, right? You've written a book, you a counselor, and you're an advocate. And I respect immensely because you stand for the black family. When I ask you what's most important to you, it's your family. Those are both anti-system things. The system is designed for you not to think that way. System is designed for you to want to go out here and sleep with as many women as you can and practice adultery at every level, but you don't follow that system belief because your mentality is not a victim, right? And what I'm saying is Kanye showed that he wasn't a victim until now you want to play on the victim card to tap into the heartstrings of the people in the community that you know the black people come and embrace you. And then my final point real quick is someone else who understood the game. See, it's like what I'm advocating is you got to understand you're playing chess. And you really got to think 7 or 8 moves ahead. You can't think emotionally right now. That's like boxing. You know, you're not going to be a good boxer if you walk in and think, I'm going to knock his head off because he said something about me. You come swinging with all your might. No, you got to watch his footwork, watch where he steps, block, know he's countering. It's strategy. And the person who loses that strategy loses the fight. Another great strategist that had a plan is 50 Cent. I used to sit here and watch 50 Cent make all these low budget, out of the blue movies on Netflix that would just appear. 50 Cent, another movie. 50 Cent, I'm like, wow, he's making all these low budget movies that never got marketed. But he was there with some of the greatest actors in Hollywood. It was with Bruce Willis, with Robert De Niro. And what he did was he learned the game. And he wasn't talking about how, you know, Hollywood cheated me. I'm a 50 Cent. I'm a successful artist. I'm supposed to be getting all my rights from these movies. No, he shut his mouth. He probably didn't get much money at all for those movies. But he learned the game, and what he do with that, he came out with his own show, started producing Power, and create a whole Power series. See, that to me is the boss revolutionary moves where you quietly learn what you need to learn. And see, Kanye, to your point about the athletic apparel world, we created that. We turned athletic sports into fashion. Before us, only old men wore warm-up suits and tennis shoes in that level. We turned it into something of a fashion icon, right? Then Kanye came along and showed you don't even have to be an athlete to do it. You could do it with the power of your influence as being an entertainer. And instead of him recognizing that, and then said, okay, I've learned the game now from Adidas. Let me go ahead and now partner with Rockefeller. Let me reach out to the brother from Fubu and say, listen, let's get back into this now, because now I understand this from a different game and we can play at a whole different level than before. But now you've made all those people say, whoa, Kanye, you crazy. I can't work with you because I'm going to mess up my relationships that I have with my Jewish community that I don't sit here and see them the same way you do because I'm eating. And then my final point on this is I watched an interview one time with Ice-T. When Ice-T, this was like years ago, and he was talking about how when he walked into a recording studio, a record executive was like, well, listen, and Ice-T said, I used to be a pimp. I used to put women out on the street, and I understood that lifestyle. And the way he talked to me, that's how I felt. He was like, listen, you recording artists, I need you to make X amount of records. I need you to make sure you do this many albums, and this is how much money I'm gonna make off you. And Ice-T was like, I had to accept that because that's the game that he was kicking until I learned the game myself. And that's all I'm really saying, that Kanye, be revolutionary with your actions, not your words.
So it's funny because I was sitting here and I was like, oh, I'm thinking of different names that are popping in my head. And I'm like, yeah, because that was revolutionary. That was when we think about Snoop and him working with Martha Stewart. And we were like,
right,
that's an odd combination, but they made it work. At Snoop, he's in foreign films. Snoop is in foreign games. We're like, what is Snoop do? Like, why are we turning around? He's in commercials in other countries. Well, it's because you learn it and then you move forward. We look at Snoop. We look at Tobe Nwigwe.
Yes.
We look at what he's done. What? That is stepping outside of what everybody else is doing and then keeping your foot to the ground and keep grinding and keep doing it. Because we have put this happy glow around the word grind. Yeah, you need to grind, you need to hustle. And for some people, that's just like, oh yeah, you just need to show up on social media. You need to show up and be in front of people. No, that means you need to be having conversations. That means you need to be going back and redoing things that did not work well. You need to be truthful with yourself and transparent about what it is you're capable of doing with your own two hands, those things. And so I think about one woman that a lot of people don't know about, but should at this point. And her name is Candace Holyfield. When I tell you, this woman is awesome. Black spa boss. So she opened up her own spa. She has been teaching other women how to open up their own spa. Now that's like, okay, cool. You go back, you get out the maze, you go back and help other people get out the maze. No, she took it to a whole nother level. This woman is taking trips to China with other women and teaching them how to buy the supplies they need for their spa. And these are not like little small, no, these are like amazing spas. They're doing teeth whitening. They're doing all of these different things. Why? Because she's like, no, we're going to take this to a whole another level. Then she said, okay, she bought her husband a truck and they have a trucking company. So then she started teaching women how to get into the trucking. And come on. Yeah. That's saying, okay, I'm not just going to stand here and say, look at me, I'm pretty, because girl is gorgeous, okay? But it's not just to say, oh, look what I did. It's to go back and say, let me give you not a handout, but a hand up sometimes. Let me educate other people. Let me be the one to go ahead and step into this other realm. And who else do you see as an African-American woman going back and forth to China to teach people how to buy the supplies for their business? Who else is doing that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But you have to come to a few things when you get to that point. first and foremost, who is beside you?
Absolutely.
Who holding you? Listen, and we always talk about, oh yeah, I need somebody to hold me down. Well, somebody, sometimes it's not them holding you down. Sometimes it's holding you back.
Wow.
Just let that sizzle in your shanana for a second. Let that sizzle in your shanana for a second. And I can I know that and understand that from personal experience, because when I did step into entrepreneurship full time in 2015, 2016, the person I was dating at the time had a complete fit. Oh, well, you going and traveling to these different events, but you haven't come to travel to see me. And I'm like, okay, I'm building something right now. Like, you have to understand the dynamic of what's going on. And even when you communicate with the people around you, are they people that are taking what you're communicating to them and using it as fuel to burn you and burn your bridges? Or are they using it and saying, okay, I'm gonna keep warm and I'm gonna hold you down until we get to this next point. I'm gonna support you. So you really have to be honest. And when we look at Kanye, look, where's the circle?
Right.
And you went exactly where I was going. Because that's part of the thing. That's part of the issue, because right now, regardless of all of the hype and all of the blowback that has happened, the position he sits in right now, he can leverage that to begin to teach young Black kids how the game goes as it relates to fashion, how to get in these rooms, how to create these contracts, how to deal with developers and manufacturers. Like, this is the space that he's in. So the talking that he's doing now, and some of these clips that I hear him, talking about, land development and some of these things that he's beginning to say now, it's about now having folk like King, and Altovise, y'all got to go try to figure out how to get in his camp so he can have individuals like that in his ear to be like, okay, listen, if you're really serious about this, here's how this is supposed to go. If you're really trying to make change and you're really trying to be impactful and you're really trying to be a renegade in this space, here's how you do it. And here's the result of doing it that way, as opposed to just, articulating, things in a way that just cause fires, but don't create and just create frustration. But they're not a catalyst. They don't foster anything as a result.
No, hate never produces anything positive, period. It never does. You can't use that as an emotion and think that you're going to, like, we see that again, Donald Trump used hate to build his base, right? But still, at the end of the day, we see the violence that produces, unless that's your goal, but you're never going to produce anything positive from hatred. And that's why I'm advocating with Kanye. If you really want to be a revolutionary, to be honest, what he should be doing is taking the money he has left, putting it in overseas accounts, Cayman Islands, Swiss accounts, creating shell corporations, and then using that shell corporation to come back in and start buying up properties in the inner cities. Because now, since he made himself public enemy number one in the eyes of the public, they're not going to let him use his money. They will find some way where if he tried to use his money directly, they're going to try to bar that or something like that. So that's why he has to go that way, because he decided to be vocal first instead of just being strategic and intentional with it. So that's what I'm saying is, to your point, that's why I question his motives. I really think he's running for president. I think that's what he's doing. And he's trying to follow Donald Trump's blueprint to say, I'm going to get out here and get in people's minds, and I'm going to build me a base of people. And I know it's not going to resonate with everybody, but for the people who do like what I say, they're going to roll with me no matter what. And that's how Donald Trump's people roll with him. They can say whatever, no matter how many. I mean, he pretty much caused, which I never thought I would see in my lifetime, a insurrection on the Capitol. Like, that's one thing you don't play. One thing we knew about this country, you don't play there. You don't play at the Capitol. Folks, I used to work down by the Capitol. They that's a whole other conversation. But what I'm saying is that was understood. You didn't play there. That's one thing you didn't play with. But they stormed the Capitol, threatened, Nancy Pelosi's life, threatened to hang the vice president, and that man's still free. And see, Kanye gonna learn that he's black now. He's gonna learn that, yeah, you like Jay-Z song, I'm not black, I'm OJ. He gonna learn that you black, and it's certain things that white man can get away with in this country, and certain things a black man can't, no matter how rich you may think that you are, right? And that's what I'm saying. Kanye needs to understand, step back for a moment, get off the internet, get off these things trying to sit here and keep getting, and that's why I say he's at attention. He wants attention, because if he didn't want attention, stop trying to talk about it. Just start having meetings. Even Russell Simmons made a post immediately after what came on a Drink Champs, and he said, listen, Kanye, and he sit there and he had Adidas in his hand, Adidas shoe. He said, me and my brother with this song, My Adidas, we turned Adidas around, a German company. We did that. And so I don't agree with the way you said it, but if you really want to begin to start doing some building, holler at me. That's another billionaire saying that. Now, has he reached out to Russell Simmons yet? I don't know, right? But to me, that's the kind of moves he needs to be making. But those moves need to be off camera, off the internet, right? They need to be behind closed doors, and they need to be, because think about this from a context. When the PPP loans came out and they were giving corporations money, they gave Under Armour $750 million. And Under Armour, and I still got the article. It says that they looked at that like, yeah, we haven't even used that yet. We don't even know how to put that in effect. $750 million. Now, $750 million can change. Y'all both know about Baltimore. That can change Baltimore as a city. If somebody brought $750 million to the city, what they would do for the city for economic development. They get into one company that said that we don't even know what we're going to do with it yet, right? So that's really how they think about capital in the context, and I'm using that to make my point. And if we begin to really intentionally look at it, it's not about hating anybody, being anti anybody. It's about being pro-deliberate, about making a change to transform your community you grew up in, and stop seeing the pain and the suffering that we've all had to go through about being a Black community. That's what it's about. That's what I'm advocating, is we can begin to do things out of love. And I think that folks who are not racist, who may be from other races, whether they're white, whether they're Indian, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Jewish, from the Jewish community, would come and support us, because at the end of the day, folks who are about love are about love. Love is not just restricted to one race. And I think when people will start to see a positive, powerful movement like that, they're going to want to empower that, and they will want to support that. And that's kind of what my position is. And my final point is this. Another person I wanted to bring up that showed behind closed doors how you move in this world. And I think that's what the blueprint is. And we should study these individuals. Rihanna. Rihanna is a billionaire as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And now she's like, I'm going to do a concert right now. Not because she has to. She's like, I'm going to drop an album out right now. And I'm going to drop an album and do a world tour. And the world is just dying for her to come out with another album on the world tour. Yeah. See, that's how you move, where you can move intentionally and revolutionary. That's a revolution. How did she become a billionaire? Right. I know she had a makeup line, but they don't describe how she did it. Right. I want that to be what our youth look at as role models and pattern themselves after, because that to me is Black brilliance in its fullest. Right.
Yeah, I believe we are, and this is the thing that, and it's talked about all the time with individuals who are at the status level, excuse me, that they are at. We have to get in a space where we begin to think about legacy building as opposed to just hoarding. Like I'm all about growing your business, scaling, doing everything that you need to do. That we should be about growth and expansion and forward thinking and forward movement. But we also need to think about what comes behind us. Who are we going to empower to do the same thing? Who are we going to teach? Who are we going to let observe us? Who are we going to train? Who are we going to set up to give them an opportunity to execute? And what kind of feedback are we going to provide? Like, I believe that from a conscious standpoint, that is exactly what we should be doing as it relates to our family structure, our community makeup, our societal ideology. It should all be about, okay, here's what I've experienced. Here's the result. Let me teach you how to do that. And if we can get to that point, we'll be willing to give of our resources, whether that be time, whether that be money, whether that be education, whatever it may be. We'll be willing to do that because we understand what it means to build that from the inside out.
I'm glad that you said that too, because another part of it is we can't let FOMO drive us. Like, in order for you to be someone of integrity that is okay with doing things that is not posted on social media, that is not televised, that is not talked about, that you don't always see, everybody don't always see what's going on, is you have to not be driven by FOMO. When you are driven by FOMO, that means that you are driven by your emotions. That also means that you always need somebody to be the person to give you your high fives and your amens. And I did a post, and I think the post went that your level of success is not going to always match with the sound of the applause.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just real.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's just real. Like, if we look at the Grammys, if we look at the Emmy, okay, some of your favorite artists never got one.
Right.
But were they not still successful?
Right.
Yeah.
No, they were successful, but your success is not always going to be, it's not always going to equal to the amount of applause you get. Because the reality is, it's who is the applause coming from? And who do you really need the applause from? Who is it coming from, and who are you really trying to get it from?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have that understanding, now we're no longer driven by FOMO. So I have people that say to me, wait, you live stream on Amazon? You're an influencer? How? When did that happen? Oh yeah, I've been doing it for almost 2 years now. They're like, you have a podcast? Yeah, it's been going on for 6 years. And people will see me put something on social media and be like, oh my goodness, it's so great. Oh my goodness, it's overnight success. No. There's a lot of conversations. There are a lot of me showing up, me being in spaces where I volunteered and learned in order for me to get to the place that I'm at right now. And I thought it was funny because I had, like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I had someone that is a family member. And they were like, oh, wow, you got a couple books out and everything. Have you made $1 million yet? And I was like, what did that have to do with anything?
Right.
Because FOMO is, well, if you've made $1 million, then I need to be connected to you so I can make $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But do you really need $1 million? And can you actually handle $1 million?
Absolutely. What is for our listening audience, what does FOMO mean?
Oh, sorry about that. So FOMO is fear of missing out.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the reason why we show up to events where we didn't really want to be there, but we knew that certain people would be there. We wanted to kind of hodgepodge. We wanted to rub elbows with people. We wanted to take photos, but you really didn't get anything from the actual event.
Just felt like you needed to be in the space.
Yeah, you just need to be in the room where it happened.
Right.
The room where it happened.
You know the crazy thing about that, the $1 million question too, is that it speaks to that, and it speaks to what we associate with success. Mm-hmm. So everything that you've been doing, and I'm just meeting you, and everything that I'm hearing, in my mind, I'm hearing highly successful.
Same here. That's what I was thinking.
But the person who asks, "Have you made $1 million?" They're like, "Well, if you're not a millionaire, then you're not successful." They've missed the entire process, and
Exactly.
every piece of that process has moved you in a direction. That is success. That you have continued to move in that direction. It's not the destination of, yeah, I'm a billionaire. It's what have I done, right? Because I could get to $1 billion doing some real dirty stuff.
True indeed.
So would you still look at me as a great success if I made $1 million helping build the community and build families and I was consistent in how I show up? Like, that's where the success is. And we really have to find a way to change that for folks.
Well, to that point,
Show them that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's good.
To that point, what I was thinking is the only difference between, from a financial standpoint, because I agree, because I know even a little bit more about your backstory and know what you had to overcome to achieve where you are. So that's what's even more remarkable, and what's lacking in our community, what our community doesn't use a lot of, and that's where I was saying this is where for Kanye to come out and make the statements he's made, that's why it's so detrimental to our community, because our community doesn't understand the importance of connections. Mm-hmm. Social capital is key. All that success that you've made, but then you couple that with the right connections, that's what brings in the millions of dollars, right? Is those connections that help that out, those individuals that say, wow, I see what you're doing. Let me put you on this platform. Let me put you on this show. Like if Oprah were to interview you overnight, and that's what it would look like, overnight success, because now your book is the book of the month club, all the women are reading your book, and now you get all this attention, and that would seem like it came overnight, but that's just that one show, that one connection that can make that happen. And see, for me, that's why I'm always looking at as a system engineer and a connector, how to get to those connections that can make that happen, right? And you have to have a track record, though. So when you do get there, it's not an ideal. Here's what I want to do. No, here's what I've been doing. And here's what you can look at. And that person will say, okay, you have this track record. You have this social capital behind you. I want to help take you and make you more visible in the world in whatever place that may be. And Kanye had that. And then he goes back and he wants to criticize and talk about those individuals who helped him out by saying, you didn't help me out the way I wanted you to help me out.
Exactly.
You can't blame those individuals for that. You got to look at it and say, what can I get from this situation? How can I leverage it to my best advantage? And sometimes it may be, I can only get 10%. But, I would ask most people, would you take 10% of $100 million? Or you take 100% of $100,000? Which one of those would you take? Right. And the right connection can make that this distinction and help you begin to move in that right context. And I just wanted to point out another individual who I think, and this is what I think we should do more as a community, is lift up these brothers and sisters who are doing this work like this, who don't really get the recognition. I think another revolutionary move that's being made right now is by Deion Sanders.
Yes.
Because what he's doing by going to HBCU at Jackson State and bringing his intellect, his influence, his skill, his competence, more importantly, his social capital with the cameras now you're showing that what HBCUs can do. He's not sitting back saying, I'm just going to talk about it on, Sports Center and just give my opinion and get paid as a high paid analyst and go back home. No, he decided I'm going to put action behind my thoughts and I'm going to put sacrifice behind that. And I'm going to go out here and do this work. And to the point where I saw an interview, and I tell everybody they need to watch it. It's an interview they did with him on 60 Minutes, and what he's gone through as a result of making a decision to go to Jacksonville State and only getting paid $500,000 a year. That's probably the lowest salary he's had since he's been 18. And arguably, he has to be, if not the best athlete we've ever seen. Arguably, you can make the argument because he was successful in both sports. He wasn't like Michael Jordan, who was very successful in basketball, and his baseball career was kind of laughable. No, Deion was at the top of his game in both and played the World Series as well as played in the Super Bowl. And so my thing is, And then for him to be as spiritual with it and understanding that he has a purpose in this world. So that's where I'm going with this. See, I don't think Kanye, and this will be my advice to him, you haven't tapped into your purpose in life yet. You just kind of acting, and your talent is showing up, and it's there, and you definitely are blessed with a talent. But when you tap into your purpose, like I believe you all both have tapped into your purposes, and that's why we do what we do with such pleasure and such enjoyment and such fulfillment, that whether we make $1 million or not, we still fulfilled at the end of our day as a result of the actions that we do and the lives that we're impacting, and then we see the changes that we're making in people's lives.
Yep. And let's hope that this is the beginning of that. This is not just rhetoric, and that it actually is the beginning of him moving towards that end. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We have to understand what's at stake.
Exactly.
And that if this African proverb, it says if you want to move fast, go by yourself. If you want to move, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. And we got to get in that mindset of, okay, there's a spiritual component to this. There's a conscious component to this. There is a path that we could take that allows us to win. And we need to be intentional about being willing to lead others and being willing to walk together on that path. And hopefully this is the beginning of that for him.
I have to say the takeaway too is go deeper than the soundbite. I know it's easy for us to get riled up by a soundbite that somebody puts out and everybody's like, oh, Kanye said this or this person said that. That's for any person. But go deeper than the soundbite, because the soundbite is meant to draw you in to the conversation, but go deeper than the soundbite. And so go deeper than the quote that's put out, go deeper than the headline that's put out. We have to be willing to do the research and read a little bit, listen a little bit, so that way we can educate ourselves. Because if you're not willing to go a little deeper, then all you're willing to be, have done to you is to be dragged. You're literally being dragged from day to day by the sound bites that you allow yourself to be stirred up by. And so when you go ahead and decide that you're going to, dig a little deeper, then you're pulling the reins and the power out of somebody else's hand and putting the power back into your own. So even when it comes to quotes he may have said, things he may have done, yes, most times he did say it. We're not going to deny it, but go a little deeper, educate yourself. And if you feel as though what he said was wrong, then stand on that. But make sure that you're standing on it with power, not standing on it because somebody else pulled you to that platform and, they're kind of controlling the reins. I think that's like the positive and negative about social media. Is the positive, we can go ahead and reach everybody in the world. The negative, we can do one thing and reach everybody in the world. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the full story. It can be just a snippet. It can be however we want to deliver it, but we still reach everybody in the world. So understand that you do have to go deeper than the soundbite for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we get ready to kind of bring this conversation to a close, I definitely want to thank you all both for your investment of time and energy. And I want to kind of go through some closing thoughts, because I know that you all both have a lot of wisdom, and I want you to begin to share the wisdom with the listening audience. And that's what I really want the Spiritual Capitalist Show to be about. Again, this platform was not for us to sit here and gossip about, what Kanye did and all that. It's really to examine what he did from a context of how do we learn from that, and how can we grow from that, and how we can build from that. And I just want to, before we do our closing thoughts, I want to share a comment that, Muhammad Awais said, true empowering others I have learned a lot from watching this. Your energy means much more to me. Keep sharing to impact others, blessings. So thank you always for putting your comment there and being engaged with us as we begin to build. And before I give you all the moment to put your closing thoughts, I just want to make sure this is clear as well, that what Kanye said was wrong on all our levels. To stigmatize a race of people or a group of people because of the actions of others who may have personally affected you is wrong. And that's where we got to get away from this country, is making generalizations in that context, because it hurts people in that context. And we need to begin to be more empathetic to understanding how our actions and behaviors impact the lives of others. So that's all I wanted to add. And I'll give you all your closing thoughts. I have my closing thoughts, and we'll be ready to go ahead and wrap up the show. So ladies first.
But of course, closing thoughts would be have the conversations. I know it's easy for us to look at, everything that's going on. And again, just talk about the hot topic, talk about the headline, but really have some conversation and ask people where they are. Because I think, again, it's really important for us to know who we have in our circle and who we can trust. And sometimes we have to be the one to tell people that we may not be, where we think we should be at this moment, but be willing to have those conversations. I will say, I will commend him on having these conversations. I don't necessarily feel like he's having it in the right areas or with the platforms that he's on, but I do commend him for getting it out. Because especially when it comes to African-American men, you've been taught to kind of hold back whatever it is that you may be going through or what you've experienced, because you're supposed to deal with it. And that's not necessarily the case. So I do commend him for coming out and having the conversations, not necessarily the right platforms, but it is what it is. But as men, African-American men, as African-American women, listen, whatever nationality you may be, have the conversations, because that's the only way that we'll be able to go ahead and make sure that not only we're educating ourselves, but we're getting the support that we need.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I second that. I am big on conversation. It is a catalyst for learning on all levels. So those conversations are important. And I would say for me, final thoughts is that if anybody who knows me knows I'm big on the family unit. I'm big on how the building up of that family unit feeds into society as a whole. And it doesn't have to be big, is my final thought. So yes, this conversation we're talking about, Ye has the resources, he has the capital from a financial standpoint. He has the ability to really make some big moves really quickly if he so desired. But it doesn't, if you can't do that, you're not handicapped in your approach. There are things that you can do right with the people that are around you to change the culture and the mindset as it relates to spiritual capital and social capital and conscious leadership. And those seemingly small indentations create a ripple effect that will allow us to see some of the change that we desire to see in our communities. So you can do something. If you're listening, you can do something, even if you're not a billionaire, even if you don't have the deals, even if you don't feel like you have the quote unquote influence. You are already placed, if you look around you, in a scenario where you can affect change. So do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my final thoughts would be that what you have to understand is that everything in life is based upon your relationships in life. And to be successful in life, not just from a financial standpoint, but to the point where you find fulfillment in what you do as an individual, and you align with your purpose and your vision, it's going to come from you first connecting with who you are as an individual and being clear and clarity on that. One of the books that was written by a Jewish author that I really Love is a book that I highly recommend that people read. It's The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He talks about when he was in the Nazi death camps and he watched his wife get killed in front of him and all of his family members and people he knew, and to lose his financial fortune, that the reason he didn't hate his captors and hate his experience and play the victim role was because he tapped into his purpose in life. And when you tap into meaning, that supersedes everything you are and everything that you do. And so first connect with meaning, connect with your purpose, and then begin to build and align with other people who are connected to their purpose, and their purposes are aligned with who you are and the direction you're moving in, and co-create to make greater things happen. Take that action and don't sit back on the fence and criticize, but get out there and self-actualize and make things happen in that context. So with that being said, those are my final thoughts. I want to bring our first show by the Conscious Capitalist to a close. I want to thank my audience. My listening, my guests, forgive me, for joining me. Again, folks who are authors, folks who are out here doing it. You have been a blessing. Thank you for your time. And I close with these thoughts on this. Again, spiritual capitalism is designed to bring about love, empowerment, transformation, growth, acceptance, and self-actualization. So please read the book, look at ways you can live this in your life. And I wish everyone a blessed and productive remaining part of your day. Thank you.